First though, the collapse on the Clyde. The King's Highway has reopened now following the landslide near Pooh Corner, but never have so many Canberrans and coasters trekked their way along alternative routes. Some went via Araluen, some went via Nowra, some went down Brown Mountain. In some cases, it became a 5-hour journey. So, clearly no longer a day's return trip. But the road finally did reopen yesterday. The landslide, though, brings safety once again into sharp focus. That no vehicle was crushed by the 1,600 tonnes of rock and debris was a bit of a miracle. As for the rest of the King's Highway, well, the NRMA has named it one of the most dangerous roads in New South Wales. Jeremy Thompson reports.
The road from Canberra to the coast has rarely been so quiet, so deserted. The King's Highway, according to the NRMA, is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in New South Wales. And that no one was hurt when hundreds of tonnes of rock, soil and trees crashed across the Clyde mountain part of the road last Friday was all down to luck. Andrew Messenger is a journalist with the ABC. He made it past the landslide on Friday, but only just. The retaining fence was already bulging with the weight of the first rocks of the landslip.
There must have been dozens of them wedged in up to the top of the fence line. Nothing had gone across the fence, and to me it was just amazing as I drove past that the fence was holding. So the fence obviously was quite strong for what had happened, but presumably not strong enough for what was about to happen.
Andrew Messenger, who had his wife, daughter and grandchild with him, saw only 6 or 7 cars behind him after they passed the critical spot. They must have been only a minute or two from disaster.
After knowing what had happened, the thought was what would have happened if it had crashed down while we were going through, and it's really something you can't contemplate. We were lucky, and I think everyone was lucky that it wasn't much worse than it turned out to be.
It could have been an absolute disaster, and there'd be no way of recovering them without, finding dead bodies underneath. They would have just been suffocated or crushed. So, pure luck and, good luck for those people, but we can't keep running that sort of risk in the future.
Transport authorities were so concerned that a helicopter was dispatched with a powerful metal detector to make sure there was no vehicle crushed beneath the debris.
I think we've been extremely lucky in this event.
Eurobodalla Shire's General Manager, Paul Anderson, acknowledges that only luck prevented casualties on a road that is at its busiest on Fridays as Canberrans make their weekend coastal trek. And while they won't be a weekly event, more slides will happen in the future.
You never rule out a landslide on terrain such as this. As soon as we cut roads and things through mountains, we always disturb the natural geology, and in doing so, we probably expose those sort of risks a little bit more.
That mountain's got to be made absolutely secure. It carries a lot of traffic, and the traffic load is increasing day by day. What they've got to do is actually put some serious money into that road to make sure that the retaining walls are going to retain the mountain, that there's never going to be a possibility of a landslip, no matter what happens.
The bolts driven into the bedrock certainly did not prevent this slide, but for the time being, the road has been declared safe. A week of relative isolation has proven costly to the commerce of both the South Coast and Braidwood, although the skateboarders have taken advantage of a quiet Wallace Street in Braidwood. And it was quite a job, dangerous at times, to clear the road, especially the trees which precariously overhung the road.
We then got in some tree loppers who had to actually abseil down the mountain to remove the vegetation, and some of the trees that had fallen with the slide were actually hanging out over the road, so we had to get rid of those. And that meant we didn't actually get into getting an excavator on site until about 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and then the guys have worked extended hours and long hours well into the night each night since then to make sure that we could get it open by today.
The road may be open again, but the King's Highway remains just as dangerous as ever. Twice this year, the road has claimed multiple fatalities, and several crosses remind us of earlier deaths, like that of Tom Gore in April of 2010. He died on a particularly narrow stretch of road when he hit a tree only a couple of metres from the road. Tom was 17 years old. The NRMA has campaigned for years to have the road widened and straightened, using some of the billions of dollars the federal government reaps from the fuel excise we all pay.
It probably is the third worst road in New South Wales. The Pacific Highway was the worst. It had the most crashes. It was the most dangerous because of the amount of traffic. The Princes Highway is the second worst road in New South Wales, and the King come right behind that as the third. So for the South Coast and ACT residents, they're going to spend most of their life driving on roads which are the second and third worst roads in New South Wales.
And the worst part of the third worst road is, arguably, the narrow stretch halfway from Braidwood to the top of the Clyde, the part where young Tom Gore died. And while over the years the Clyde mountain stretch and through to Bateman's Bay has been improved, there's still a long way to go. As far as safety goes, in your shire and in Pallarang, things need to be done, don't they?
Oh, there's no doubt that we need some greater investment in this road, and I suppose we're looking towards the state and the federal government that, you know, when things like the Pacific Highway construction completes, when the Hume Highway construction completes, we want to see a greater share of resources being put to this King's Highway, but also the Princes Highway that runs up and down the south coast to improve that asset condition and the safety standards for our communities that travel it on a regular basis.
And in the meantime, for all those people from Canberra to the coast who brave the King's Highway every week, it's a trip on a wing and a prayer.
The reality is people will do stupid things. We're human beings, we make mistakes. But if you make a mistake, you shouldn't die for it. More importantly, other people shouldn't die because of your mistake. And that happens far too regularly on that road.
Thousands of people use that road every weekend, every week. You know, we all put our faith in the people whose job it is to make sure those roads are safe, and if they tell us it's safe, I think, you know, we use it and hope they're right.
And only a few minor driving laws were broken in the making of that story. Jeremy Thompson reports.